Welcome to the Thinkonomics show. Today we are speaking with Dr. Hamzah Kassim, Doc Hamzah, or Doc Hamzah, right?
Yes.
As affectionately we call you that. Right? So Doc Hamzah, tell us a bit about your life, your career. I know you started in government, and then you transformed into a corporate leader. Talk us through that journey.
Okay, when I came back from my studies, I spent a couple of years in US in the earlier days, part of the new economic policy. The government sent many of us to study, and I was one of the first generation that went. So I ended up in a liberal arts college in US, and liberal arts schools in US is a different creature.
Really liberal arts.
Real liberal arts, and the first few years you study anthropology, social science, political science, and you do physics, chemistry, biology. So it's a class of 15 people, and you have a very intensive intellectual discourse. And having finishing my studies, I came back and I was really amazed at the things that I have seen overseas. And when I came back, the government was in the very early phase of shifting from agro-based to an industrial economy. And I was doing a lot of research on economics when I was studying. So the first thing when people like us come back in the early 80s or late 70s is to give us a major task of nation building. And I think there's no playbook, so you have to start from scratch to build those new institutions. And I think many of us are has this good opportunity of rolling up our sleeve and build something from zero, and building.
So what do you end up getting involved in?
I was end up in doing industrial research, in building the standards and industrial research, and building the early phase when the country was just moving into a manufacturing phase, and we were establishing the right standards, the right testing laboratories, the right technical institutions that could support Malaysian companies moving up the value chain. And at that time, there was a lot of inflow of free trade zone and FDIs, and the government was very key to see how Malaysian companies benefited as part of the supply chain. And our task was building the infrastructure. And after that, I went for my PhD and did a study on growth and technology. So when I came back after 3 years in UK, I ended up in ISIS. So I owe this to the late Tan Sri Nordin Sopi. So he met me and asked me what I was studying. I said technology and growth. He said, why not you come to a small group to just brief what you did in your thesis. And I went out with like a cabinet committee, and I didn't know there's such a...
And ISIS, just for our viewers, is not the one in Syria, but it's a think tank.
Yes. ISIS is a think tank in Malaysia. So, and after that, I was asked to develop a blueprint for a national technology plan. So that was a moment of truth for me to be able to lead a large projects in ISIS in terms of the next wave of industrial transformation, and that's led to a lot of new institution in R&D and technology, and also the emergence of the new training institution. And after delivering the report, which is a big, and then I had to face the current Prime Minister when I was delivering that report, and they decided. I went back to my research work, and after a year I was asked to go into Ministry of Science to execute the whole plan, and I realized that execution is much tougher than
talking about it and conceptualizing
than implementation and conceptualization, because it involved inter-ministries, and I have to deal with warlords and territorial in various ministries. So you have to be able to handle, manage stakeholders, and be able to work with industry, because even in ISIS I was working very close with the industry in terms of getting their feedback, consultation process, and working with different stakeholders. So in the government, when you do this execution, you really had to be able to consult and get consensus and persuade people and manage conflicts and tensions, and it is not an easy task, but it's for us it's a good lesson.
It's always hard to navigate, I guess, the government circles and get things across.
Yes.
So you managed to successfully move a couple of projects and execute a number of things.
Yes.
But why that transition to the corporate world? 2002, right, when you set up IA Group. How did that whole thing morph about?
When I was doing this sort of work, I get a bit of high profile among many of the industries, and I got an offer from 3 global consulting companies to join them, and I was thinking, this is the moment of truth, whether I exit the government and move to a global companies, and so I decided that maybe this is something that you need. I can't be staying too long in government, because I feel that it's my obligation as a recipient of the new economic policy to move to industry and create wealth. So I went into the accepted a job in first a British UK based called PA Consulting. So and although the government in the first was not too happy to release me, but I got someone I know to persuade them. So they released, and I went to become the MD of a global consulting firm, which people were surprised that I have from people in the firm were surprised that from government you
become
a CEO of a consulting. So we do a lot of job in the first 2 years. Then I was then offered to be partner of EY, and then to manage larger projects, and most of the project is coming from government, because they know me well, and I get called all the time to see whether you can resolve these issues, because these are far complex problem. But my experience in government give me an insight how to deal with the government from a different perspective. So I find I can do much change and transformation in government as an independent advisor.
Okay.
Because when you're in the government, you have to a bit constrained what you have to say, but when you're outside, you can give more independent views. So I spent 7 years in the global consulting. Then I was the country head of Capgemini,
right?
also
there for a while.
But the opportunity, second moment of truth came in when Capgemini started to scale down their operation and asked me whether I could take over the firm. So I from an employee to employer, I have to worry about 200 payroll people to take that. So after a while, I said yes, I would do it. I called a few of my colleagues to join, and that's how we started the IA Group.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break right now. We'll be right here back on the Yomi Show with Dr Hamzah. Welcome back to the Thinkonomics Show. We're speaking with Dr Hamzah Kassim from formerly Capgemini and then now IA Group. Let's talk about that transition, right? So you were offered to take over the Capgemini workforce, essentially.
Right. Yes.
This is a huge task, right? You got to build a new company, build a new brand, build a new company.
Yes.
How do you go about doing that?
So I've called a few of my friends, 2 of my friends who have probably retired, and called them back and say, look, this is a real opportunity. I went to speak to a couple of clients and asked them, is it a good idea? They were very encouraged, me, and said, look, this is a good opportunity. We need a national consulting. At that time, there was no national consulting. They are mostly the international, branch of PwC or EY, which I was part of it. So we look at it and look at the national needs, and that there need to be a consulting firm that understand Malaysian requirement. When you're part of a global firm, and many of our friends who work in international company, probably you are dictated by the global strategy. So we need to develop a national consulting firm that help to grow enterprise and also institution. And because at that stage of 2000, we are also growing the economy. So I decided that I go to most of the clients and say, look, I need the cash flow, and they all say, don't worry, we'll ensure that we pay you on time, because no banks is going to fund a knowledge enterprise because we don't have assets. So I decided that the strategy is to retain our international DNA. So we stayed at KLCC Petronas Tower for 10 years. because to build a brand that we are no different from an international firm. So we have to pay the same salary what those firms are paying, and they're not cheap because they are benchmarked against global compensation. So we select those people who wants to be part of the new firm and start a new mission. And the new mission is similar to what Thinkonomics was trying to do, transforming, it's of transformation, companies, enterprise, and nation building. So a lot of people who joined us are very passionate in this new mission. So we grow the company and start to diversify into separate services, because we track the companies, and after we do the strategy, we do large technology implementation like SAP. These are global solution, and the companies start coming to us and say, we need to train our people, we need to help them in their resourcing, talent management. So we start to spin off a couple of companies and rebrand in 2007 as IA Group, because we have spin off like 6-7 companies, and start to move the business model from just project based to annuity income. So because project like the IT project or strategy project is all project based, and to extend the business model to more annuity income to get more sustainability of the business. So we grew and start to do a large scale project and in Saudi Arabia, in Indonesia. So we start to branch to other countries to do, but we realized that going to other countries is not easy. We also lost money in some of those countries, but it's a learning process to internationalize your business. But we start to focus back into the Malaysian market because there's still a lot of opportunities. And but as a leader of a consulting company, as a CEO, we are measured against our thought leadership, our research, our analysts, and we have to bring highly smart people. And the way you run the consulting firm to attract good people in is to give them challenging assignment. Yeah. So we were doing a lot of public policy work on the Bumiputra economic reforms, on merger and integration, on restructuring of enterprise. So it's very exciting so a lot of people, it's like a new business school. They come in, they work with us for 3 years, and they move on to. So
how do you keep them? I mean, how do you keep them? Or is that just a model, like all consulting firms do that?
Yes, I know we like to retain the talent, and these are the people who basically only wants to do challenging assignment. And quite recently, we have one big assignment where there are 300 people, 300 consultants on one big project for 5 years, and fatigue start to come in on the second year, and I get fatigue too. In the sense of a project, a strategic project is very demanding. You are probably solving problem and crisis almost every other week, and the scope start changing. This is typical of any consulting project. Scope start changing, new issues start to emerge, and I have to dive in, and sometimes my team say I tend to micromanage, but as an owner you can't run away, because I always remind them every project is our last project. We have done 100 projects. You just take one project and your brand is gone. And so this is where you have to be hands-on. You see many leaders, co-founders, they cannot let go of the firm. Yep. So you yourself in the same.
I have to learn to let go. I'm learning.
Yeah, I'm starting to let go now. Because I have a new CEO, and I've just divested part of the company. But like a serial entrepreneur, I'm going to invest in other companies. And now I'm helping growing new startup and coaching them and mentoring them. After nearly 20 years of management consulting, and another 18 years of.
So you look back in your life, so many, very diverse, with government,
right.
with building a business from scratch, essentially, right. Consulting,
right.
And now as an investor, and kind of different phase in your life, right? So you look back, right? What sort of advice? Look back at your life and say, what was your secrets to success? What do you think were the little pieces of advice that you can give to others? That they say, I too want to be a successful person to build a business, or I too want to be successful in life, right? What sort of advice would you get to impart to people who ask you that question?
Well, I think first you have to know your passion, what you you like to do, and to me it's not working, it's just enjoying doing it. I wake up in the morning, Saturday, Sunday I can't stay at home, I'm just looking forward for Monday to get in, and on the weekend my staff knows that they get a bunch of email from me, and they never answer sometimes. So, and this is working, you have to be worrying about what's the next to do. So I would suggest people to really find your passion and take long-term view, because put money aside. Sometimes if people are trying to short-term, about the profit of the company, you have to take a long-term vision of the company, and you have to know where the company is heading and how you create value, and you have to work with people, and to attract and you get to you get a trust and a strong relationship with all. I always ask the young people, they're not good in building relationships and networks, and in business you can't survive without strong relationship and trust. The fact that when I started IA, when the client asked you, don't worry, continue, all the contracts were novated to us, and no single firm objected to that. These are big GLCs and private sector firms. The fact that they trust, they say you can do as good as, after all, it's a global brand, but the delivery is by the Malaysian team, most of them. So that trust and relationship, and to believe that you have greater thing and a sense of purpose and to do good. Because many of us, the staff that come and join us, is all about what is their legacy, what is the value you want to create, and how you're going to be remembered. These are important issues. If you take a short-term view, and there's a lot of business cannot sustain when you take a short-term view.
Yeah. So some really good sage advice there from Dr. Hamzah. Kassim, we're going to take a quick break right now. We'll be right back here on the Thinkonomics Show. Welcome back to the third and final segment of the Thinkonomics Show. We're speaking with Dr. Hamzah, and we're talking about his entrepreneurial journey, his government journey, and lots of journeys. But every person who comes on the show is subject to our Thinkonomics challenge. And that's this little challenge over here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pick a couple of questions and randomly ask you these questions, and as fast as you can. The timer's right here. You answer them, and if you accomplish that, you get to keep a set. All right, here you go. All right, Thinkonomics challenge. If no one would ever find out, what crazy thing would you do? If no one would ever find out.
It's not an easy question, but I most of the time I feel that I want to go somewhere where people have not gone through. Like climbing a mountain, and I've seen people do crazy things. I want to do those things that people like bungee jumpings, and so that's something that I like to do.
Okay. Do you agree with the proverb, it takes money to make money?
Yes, as a business, you really need the money to, but money should not be the end game. But to start a business, you need money, and you need good people to drive. But if money should not be your end game.
Okay. Do you think it's alright to always give but not receive anything in return?
No, I think in all our business, we look at long term and what is the impact, and that's why client comes back, because every time we go to the business, if we cannot do the project, we say we won't waste your money and don't waste our time, because we cannot see the consequential impact of those projects. So, and that make business more sustainable, because people feel that you are honest, you have high degree of ethical practices in driving businesses.
Okay. Now, how old would you be if you didn't know how old you are?
Probably 45.
And remain there forever.
Forever.
How do you feel about your partner reading your personal email?
I think it's unethical, because these are things that one should not do. And I remember from the early days, I was brought up in the family where my two grandpa are teachers in Penang Free School in Penang.
Okay.
We were trained,
Okay.
Penang Free School. They were very ethical. From young, we used to sweep the leaf of the neighbor mango tree, and he would ask us to sweep, but take the mango and return back to the neighbor. And we never forget that sort of ethical advice, and that's why I end up in Anti-Corruption Commission and many other places to drive.
We have to talk about that.
To drive some of the very difficult choices you have.
Last question. If you had just won $1 million, would you quit your job? Maybe for you it's $1 billion.
Yeah, I don't think so. I continue because
you do what you love.
I do what I love, and maybe not helping. I'm always I've done work in Syria before the civil war. I traveled many parts of the world working for international agencies. I probably do that.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay, you get to keep Thinkonomics, and you've passed the challenge. A couple of questions. You're talking about MACC, right? You play a role in the MACC now.
Yeah.
Talk us through that, and do you ever see Malaysia progressing to a phase where I guess you can never say we're completely corruption-free, but at some point, somewhat corruption-less, maybe.
Yes, I think when I was asked to be a member of I spent around 5 years or 6 years in different panel, and recently, last 3 years on the main board of the anti-corruption. We finished my term in April. But I think it's a very difficult time for us because I believe countries must have strong institutions. A lot of people ask me why I'm getting involved in this. I say, we just cannot just talk. And we have to do something. And then that's, I believe, the major principle. So people complain and say, this is not right. I always advise that, get involved. Whether you're NGOs, you're part of the institution, or you're teaching in the universities. I sit on the board of universities. Young, you need to start to build those articles. I think it's not easy. As the last speaker was talking about political financing, and we discussed this at length. The source of some of the corruption is political financing, and we try to resolve this. It's not an easy task. It requires consensus from both parties. But there are root causes in this, and particularly corporate governance, and there are new laws that have been done by MACC on corporate liability. So I think that there'll be layers of check and balances that to be done, and I would say both private sector and those people in working equally responsible to fight corruption. And it's not going to be easy, but I think the recent few months we have seen that there are changes happening.
Okay. And you were a guy in government before, and you left, set up your own business and so on. If you now looking at the new Malaysia and the new government in place, what sort of advice would you impart to this new crew? What should they be focusing on? What should they be thinking about?
You see, we are always moving through different phases of development, and each phase of development requires different capability system, different mental model. You cannot bring all institutions to do new things. So I find sometimes, some of the old institutions that my generation built have come to some degree of life cycle where they need to be revamped, to relook at the whole, close down or reinvigorate, bring new processes, technology, new talent, because we are moving to a next stage of growth and it becoming more complex. I always draw this chart from showing the capability of government is sort of stagnant or declining. Complexity of governance become more growing. So that gap has to be closed. And today, closing that gap require a lot of investment in talent development. And I think my generation benefited because we traveled around the world. We went to some best school. We were trained in that sort of rebuilding some top talent, sending them to top public policy school, economic school. Continuing education of public service is critical. At every level of government, you need huge investment in building talent because the complexity of government is increasing. And you don't know when's next financial crisis. I think the strong capability of any leaders or CEOs is their anticipatory skill. Must anticipate where the next crisis is. As consultant, we always go to companies and say, what if? And they don't like to hear that. What if scenario? What happened to this? People tend to be in the comfort zone, and not many people like management consulting to come in, because our conversation is different from an internal conversation. As an external party, our conversation is tough conversation. And that's why when I go to government as independent advisor, ask the tough thing. When I was in Economic Council in 2009 to 11, the issue of B40 came out from our report. If you look at our new economic model report, a lot of issues which this current government is trying to tackle emerged from the new economic model. On B40, on affirmative action, on Equal Opportunity Commission, on GST, all came from this report, because this group of us from Brooklyn, from World Bank, I was fortunate to work with a strong group that come, international group that come from different part of the world, from London Business School. We brainstormed for 2 years to trying to help government to put on the right path. But as you know, execution, building capacity, and building strong institution is everybody's responsibility. And my advice to government is invest big time in new talent, build new capability system, and reinvigorate the old institution. If you need to close the old institution, do so and consolidate them. These are tough choices. When you're a student of public policy, you make tough choices in this sort of area.
So Dr. Hamzah, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Leader Show.
You.
We've been speaking to Dr. Hamzah Kassim here on the Leader Show.